Hey guys, welcome to Travel Feels. Today we're going to take a look at cinematic movement part 2. Cinematic movement is a huge part of making epic cinematic travel films, and there's just so many different ways of doing it. There's so many different tools you can use, and each of those tools you can do different kinds of movements. So in part 1, we looked at the actual different tools that we can use to make cinematic movement. We looked at things like glide cams or steady cam, gimbals and handheld movement, monopods, all sorts of different ways that you can actually make cinematic movement. And in this episode, we're actually going to take a look at what kinds of movements you can do with each of those different support tools. For this video, to show the different kinds of movements we can do, I used the Glide Cam 2000. This is actually the older version, the XR, not even the HD version. So this thing you could probably find used for under $200. It's really cheap. And that's the reason I wanted to use this instead of something like a gimbal, is because this is just a lot more accessible. I think it's a lot easier to balance and it's a lot cheaper than something like a gimbal. So this is a lot more accessible to everybody on this channel. There is a bit of a learning curve in balancing it and learning how to use it, but I would say it's much easier than a gimbal. I think a gimbal, you can get really smooth movements, but to actually get really nice cinematic movements with a gimbal can take a lot of practice, just as much practice as something like a steady cam or glide cam. When I'm filming with a steady cam or a gimbal, I try to get as many different kinds of shots as possible. That way, when I'm editing, I have a lot to choose from, and I'm not just stuck with a few different clips that I'm having to force together, even though they don't cut well together. So the more you have, the better it is. The more you film on a Steadicam or glide cam, the more you get used to these different types of movements and you internalize them so they come automatically. Right away, you'll go for some of these different shots without even having to think, oh, what kind of shot should I get next? You never want to be on a shoot and start thinking, oh, what should I do now? So you really want to practice these and internalize these movements and really memorize them so they just come automatically and you just find the best movement for that situation. All right, so let's get into the different kinds of movements. So the first kind of movement shot is a follow shot, and I really like this shot. I think it can be a really epic and just a cinematic shot. And it's also really good because it tells a lot of story. So instead of just getting a wide shot of your environment or your location, you can use a shot like this follow shot to show your character interacting with the environment. So not only are you showing the location, showing the environment, you're also showing your character going through it. So you're telling two things right away instead of just one or the other. It also shows the character progressing forward. So we're seeing that there's some sort of movement, the character is moving towards a goal. With this kind of movement shot and pretty much all the other ones, what I do is I first figure out the framing, then I make sure that we're in focus, and then I try to keep that distance away from the subject. In general, I'm not using autofocus. I'm using manual focus, and I'm just keeping the distance the same. So frame up your shot, figure out how wide or how tight you want to be, then focus it, and then keep that distance as you're moving along. Also, try to walk as smooth as possible. Even though the glide cam really smooths out things, it really helps if you walk a little bit more smooth. And it really helps to do this heel-toe action, heel-toe. Keep walking like that and keep it really smooth so you're not seeing that up and down bounce or the shake from each step. So the follow shot is a really beautiful way to get a nice cinematic moving shot. And along with that shot, I always get a leading shot. So this is kind of the reverse of the follow shot. Instead of following behind, I go in front of them and I walk backwards. I'm leading the subject forwards. And same thing here again, frame it up, then focus, and then keep that same distance away from your subject. This shot is a little bit harder with a talent. The follow shot doesn't really take that much acting, but the leading shot takes a little bit more acting. Usually I tell the talent that they can look anywhere they want except for into the camera. I usually don't want the talent to be looking straight in the camera. And this can be really hard for some people. It can be really hard to get natural walking with natural head movements and natural eye movements so that it doesn't look all fake and weird like what's going on here. So do multiple takes, try it out, get the talent more used to it. Some people are better than others at it, so just keep practicing with the talent and do as many as you need to get that nice natural look. This is another really beautiful way to get cinematic movement, and it works really well with that follow shot. Next, we have the parallel follow shot. So in this case, we're going beside the talent and we're focusing up, framing it up, and then we're just moving parallel along with them. And this is another great option in editing with the follow or leading shot. It's just a really nice shot, and you can also use it to tell some different story if there's something beside the character, let's say another character or a car or something that the character is getting into that you're introducing into the story. So for me, if I'm gonna do one of these shots, I'm gonna do all three just because I wanna make sure that I have my bases covered, that in editing, I have enough to go with, that I'm not struggling to put together that edit and forcing different shots that don't really fit together well. The next movement we have is a dolly in and a dolly out. And so here, what you're doing is that you're actually keeping the talent in the same position and you're bringing the camera closer to the talent, and then you're bringing the camera away from the talent. So dolly in or dolly out. Typically, these movements require another person to pull focus for you. So you can actually get an electronic motor onto your lens and another person controlling the focus so that as you're moving forwards or as you're moving backwards, the person or the subject stays in focus. But you could also do this if your camera has really good autofocus. I found that the Canon cameras work best in these kinds of situations, but you could also do it with some other cameras. But I find that Canon cameras are a lot faster at autofocusing, so they can keep up with that movement, the dolly in and then the dolly out. These kinds of shots are used all the time in Hollywood films. You don't even notice it, but the camera is just slowly dollying in or slowly moving out. They're really good at just drawing the viewer into that frame and kind of building that mystery of what's gonna happen next. I really like these shots, and these are a really great way to get some cinematic movement. And it's also good to keep in mind that these are different from zooming in or zooming out. The relationship between the subject and the background is actually changing when you're moving the camera forwards or moving the camera backwards. Whereas when you're zooming, there's no difference in the relationship between the foreground and background. You're just cropping in, zooming in and out. So I like dollying in and dollying out much better than zooming in or zooming out. Then lastly, a movement that I use all the time is circling around the talent. So here again, you're setting the focus, setting the frame, but in this case, you can't just move in a straight line. You want to actually move in a circle. Because if you just moved in a straight line, there would be parts of the shot that would be out of focus because your distance to the character is changing. But if you move around in a circle, you're gonna keep that same distance between you and the subject or the talent. That way, your shot's gonna stay in focus the whole time. There's tons of different ways of doing this shot. You could do wide shots, you can do tight shots, you could use a really zoomed in lens and then the background just whizzes by. Michael Bay does a lot of these kinds of movements in his movies. So there's a lot of different stuff you can do with this. I like to get in real close and get these nice portrait shots, just moving really slowly around the character. I find it's a really good way of getting a really nice shot and just keeping that nice movement in your edit. I'm constantly using this technique. I think it's a really nice way of doing a nice portrait shot. So that's it. Those are the basic movements that I'm using all the time. And there are other ones too, but these are the ones that I'm using 90% of the time. And make sure to be creative with these. There's all sorts of different ways that you could do these shots. For example, with the follow and leading shots, instead of just following up above, you could follow the feet for a bunch of different kinds of shots. Then you could mix and match these, following up above and then following the feet, or leading and then following the feet behind. There's so many different options that you can do with this. But in general, I'm using these shots 90% of the time on my films. And the key here with cinematic movement is figuring out first which support tool, whether it's a gimbal or glide cam or handheld, works best for your story, and then what kind of movement works best for your story. For example, if you have a really high-paced, energetic film, then maybe you want really big, sweeping, fast movements with a gimbal. And then if you have a more slower paced, a little bit more suspenseful film, maybe you want some really slow movements. You want to use a glide cam and just dolly in really slowly or dolly out really slowly. Figure out what works best to serve your story. So there you have it, some really great ways to get cinematic movement for your films. And these are really simple, but they do require a lot of practice. You need to practice these movements so they get really smooth and they become really ingrained in your head, keeping that distance with your subject and doing the proper movements and just knowing the different kinds of movements. So you're not wasting time on set when you only have an hour to shoot the sunset or whatever it is that you're doing. Practice, practice, practice. You'll be so comfortable with it that you'll get all sorts of nice cinematic moving shots. That's it for today. I hope you got something out of this tutorial. Guys, enjoy the filmmaking process and go get some of those travel feels.